Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Chichester. I'm the owner of Haute Healing Oasis Wellness Center in Stamford, Connecticut, Harbor Point. Right now we're sitting in our Sage Center. Haute Healing Oasis is a wellness center that features dozens of modalities that help your blood flow faster, improve your body's cellular function so your body can heal itself naturally. The place is really wrapped in a spiritual atmosphere, and with that, we created a center called the Sage Center, which we're sitting in right now, and it hits on the 4 pillars of health with different classes, workshops, and practitioners. So it's mind, body, spirit, and financial wellness. And today, I have somebody really exciting and groundbreaking to bring to you, and his name is Jorge Hachumak. He is a Peruvian medicine man who has literally fallen somehow into our lap. And he has done a couple of talks over here at Haute. He's helped some people with doing private healing sessions. And today we're gonna get deeper into his craft of healing with sacred plants. Jorge just released a book as well called Journeying Through the Invisible, so we're going to go a little into that. You can find the book on Amazon, on Audible, or on Prime. And so now, right now he's in the States really launching this book, and it's pretty imperative if you have any interest in the world of healing arts, sacred plants, Jorge is your guy. So Jorge, it is so nice to have you here with me today.
Thank you very much.
And I know that you prefer not to be called a shaman. Can you explain?
Well, I mean, all the words in America, in the ancient Americas, if you translate them, all the expressions to call people of this profession, they all mean person who has medicine person, medicine man, medicine woman, person who knows. So I just prefer to stay with the traditional expression. Shaman is an international word that comes from Russia. I think it was described by some anthropologists in the 19th century, and it's referred to the traditional ethnical priest healer, which is accurate because that really overlaps with what we do, but I prefer to just simply make the easy translation for the American words, medicine man I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, and really not a lot of people know that lineage of where the word shaman comes from. And so I think it's really refreshing that you just brought it up over here and that you brought it up in your book as well. So what was your intention for writing the book?
The book came as a suggestion because for many years I have had people coming to Peru to do different kind of things with me in the jungle, in the desert, and I found important to take some days before we enter into any serious work or ceremony to explain about the language of the visions. It's the same language of the spirits, the same language of the dreams. It's a metaphorical, poetic language that all humanity was very close, was very fond of, in all times. But we have kind of forgotten it consciously, although it stays in the back of our minds. And many people have amazing experiences, but they miss a lot of the meanings and the messages because it's very difficult for them to understand the language. So I was doing that with a lot of people explaining about the correct mindset that created this medicine and the right approach and what to do later. And I have been hearing for years, people have been telling me, I wish I knew this in the past when I did ceremonies in other places, here and that, or I've interpreted as very bad trips or confusing trips, certain experiences, but now with the understanding of how to approach these and the right protocols and the language, it's so much better. So they were telling me, you should try to write something about this and put it out, for the international scene, for people helping out people who are approaching the medicine, which is a growing community. So it came as a suggestion, and during the COVID restrictions that were extremely severe in Peru, was forced to stay at home, and I used the creative energy that I use on my healings and to put up the book,
And I feel like when I read the book, I can feel that it's literally encoded with your own healing power,
Yes.
because the way that it's written through the stories and through also the guide that you give people on your to expand and grow on their healing journey, it's a very dynamic book. So I can feel as just a reader that I'm fully thrown into the book, and I feel like I'm right there, as if I'm in a movie when I'm reading it. And I've gotten my own sort of medicine from it, have me reflect on my life and go, well, which ways can I grow? What things could I do to enhance my own spiritual practice and my own healing journey? And I read the book. I was starting to read the book after I actually met you, right? But what was great about even my healing experience with you was, if you want to get into that now, my healing experience that I had.
Sure, I just wanted to say that part of the success of the book is really the collaboration with David Carroll, which is a very good writer, artisan, and he has helped me to put a lot of the stories and the concepts in better English than mine, certainly, and he's a very great storyteller. And it is true too that in many parts of the book it's not a steady sensation, but in many parts of the book the healing energy is present through the careful wording and the way of the ideas have been laid out. And also I think that some people that are already into the craft of traditional healing will be able to find a lot of hints and things between the lines, in the book, because I describe certain things, I try to describe them very clearly, and other things are really connected for people who have some knowledge. So I think it covers from kind of beginners, outsiders, to people that are well seasoned in the art. They will find some interesting things.
Yeah, that's great. And so what 3 things have impacted your healing journey, that have brought you to this place where you feel you're fully embodied as a medicine man, you're ready to share this knowledge with others? What 3 things have really impacted?
If I have to choose 3 things, one important story, it's on the book. It's the situation sometime in the early 2000s when I was climbing a sacred mountain in the north coast. We were a small group, and some criminals came, and they came with guns and knives. And myself, I was in the jungle just 2 weeks, a few days before, spending some of my training times. And in that training chapter, I was learning how to fight against dark forces. And it's not only about the technique of fighting, it's the same like in any real fighting. One thing is the technique and the other thing is the attitude. And I was learning how to pull resources from inside of myself to really reject, the negativity with my cells, with my internal being. And then suddenly I come back, and then a few days later I'm facing this situation with these demons, incarnated demons coming, and then just coming, and inside of me it was like I will never allow them to take over, If I did not do that during my strong, challenging visions, I will not do that in this plane either, which is one of the golden rules. So there's, I mean, to make the story short, the guns were out, and then suddenly I just jumped from one side of the cliffs, not knowing what is going to happen. I prefer to just jump instead of being, submitted by them. And then there were some shots, and then I just rolled, and then I fall into cactuses. I didn't break any bone, but my flesh was open, and I was bleeding a lot. And then something happened. I felt that the mountain really took me, into her protection, and I was praying for all the other people. The story is in detail in the book, but I felt that my ribs were cracking and my chest was opening, and a very strong flow started to come out. And since then I'm able to pull that flow, and my healing capacities, enhanced a lot. So I think that experience was one before and after experience.
What I hear too is that, a lot of people think, oh, healing, and we think that it's light and it's great, and there's a lot of shadow work that's done, before we get into situations, or things show up in our life. It's our job to assist in our soul in growing and getting to the next level, and that's not always easy or pretty.
No, and definitely in all traditional serious work and training, the Stoic approach is essential, and you are able to pull certain energies and touch them for the first time, and acquire the key to unleash certain internal forces when you are facing survival.
Yeah.
And that's that's what is put on the rites of passage and a lot of the real shamanic training. So it's all the different sides of life, the destruction cycles, the creation cycles.
And you see how right now you just said that's part of the rites of passage. You clarified that not only for me, but I think for the people listening. And that you do that a lot in your book. You get some abstract concepts and you clarify them simply in such a way where the average person can go, oh yeah, that's what I've been going through. That's what I've been dealing with. I was unsure how to navigate through this whole healing spiritual world. But like I said, you put it together nicely in a very clear, simplistic way where as humans, our soul can go, oh, I know what he's talking about. Now I understand how to help navigate my life.
Yeah, I think that the idea was to explain certain things on a bird's view, because once you understand the structure, then the personal stories fill in the cases of the structure. But it's very important to explain from behind the curtain what's going on, so people can just use that to feel and understand their own journeys.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked me 3 things.
Yes.
A second one, and this one is not on the book, is a very nice thing that happened to me also sometime in the 2000s. There was an old, famous, important shaman in the jungle of Peru who died some years ago. And actually this happened during the 2010s. I knew about him, and I knew people who met him, but I never met him myself. But then one day, kind of another connection just came out, something came out about him, and I was giving his address. So I went into the city looking for his address, kind of found, the place, just saw several windows. I just glanced to one of the windows and I saw this old man, really old, one eye, really like, was covered. But then we look at each other, and it's the same thing that sometimes you connect with some of the wild animals. There is a certain kind of recognition or something. He smiled, and he immediately invited me to come in even before I knock at the door. And so we talked, and we found a lot of nice connection in terms of the plants that we like to use, which are not the main plants. There's a lot of secondary sacred plants that come along, and they're very subtle but very profound too. And so we found a lot of points, and I was really very respectful and very on a very deep emotion being in front of such an important, remarkable personality. And he asked me to be on my knees, and then he was doing some kind of passes and movements over my front, forehead and things, and then blowing. And I think he knew he was very old. He was approaching the passing, and I think he gave me some kind of particular gift. Actually, I was sad because I learned that he died a few months after I met him. I mean, it was just like a lovely meeting. But then suddenly later, when I was doing my practice, I found that I had way more resources and all the new gifts were coming to me. And he has been coming many times to help me in my ceremonies after passing. I don't want to say the name because I don't want to just stretch the story on a more personal way. But that was also a before and an after, and it's part how these things happen, One thing, you can train with somebody in a more committed way, but then you cross even any time in your life with other people, and there's an exchanging of gifts.
It's beautiful.
And a third one, I don't know, I'm thinking right now about the contact with wild animals. When you face an animal and then, there's no right or wrong, just suddenly it happens that you are there, and then there's like an interaction. And sometimes the interaction can be harsh because, of course, everybody's on a defense mode, I'm talking about big snakes or alligators or cats or other forms of mammals, big animals, vipers. I think there is an energy that is deployed, again, only in survival mode, you pull a certain dormant force that we have. And that happens with the animal, and when I'm in those moments, and I'm myself also at risk, and I'm just in full-on present time, I get these imprints, these images of patterns and certain colors and shapes in my front, similar to what I do when I'm working with people and I'm trying to dive, into their world. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I feel that the imprints that I'm getting are what corresponds to whatever archetype that particular creature means in creation. It's part of an imprint of its essence. If you want a spiritual algorithm, of what that being is, and deploying that particular inner force. So this is part of our practice. You have to develop your memory to fix in your memory and keep patterns and shapes and things, because you use them later. So I learned how to collect all these imprints in my back memory, and then later pull them out and then just cover myself or cover my patients or certain situation with kind of a sheet containing those particular patterns from those creatures, can be also plants or places, and which is one of the clues of the shamanic craft. So the collecting and the exposure and all these encounters with wild animals that I have had not only in Peru but in other places extremely enriches the toolbox, of a medicine person. Yeah. So there's always, every time that I do that, something adds up in my toolkit.
And I was just thinking too of what has sharpened your intuition, and there's no doubt, right, that the animals and just your instinct, they've been one of the factors that has helped to sharpen your intuition and what else,
Yes, but I could say too, the internal exercise of awareness, what I'm calling internal placement, which is the fact that you can move out of your regular suffering consciousness, that is checking the space and the present time and every situation based on fear, ambitions, a certain forms of gratification. It's all the time kind of half paranoid. When you connect with your soul consciousness, who really that only cares about harmony and is ready to let go whatever, and then you connect with the intelligence of the soul consciousness, which is actually intuition.
Surrender.
It's very tricky to connect with intuition when you are pulled by the strings of the suffering consciousness.
Yeah.
Because it bends the actual reading of reality, it tricks real-time attention to put all these filters in which you are basically trying to push like an agenda that is based on your past suffering.
So then how does one break out of the suffering consciousness?
It will always stay, but it has to become the servant of the soul consciousness, not the master. It's a lot of personal exercise. Certainly the healings, the work with the sacred plants, any form of isolated meditation, exposure to the natural elements will connect you with those. But this internal placement, the capacity of acquiring the agility to switch from the soul consciousness and the suffering consciousness and vice versa, whenever you need it, it's, I think, the core point that all the ancient schools of internal knowledge and self-development and spirituality have always had. They can address it sometimes through fasting, through continuous praying, through stopping the mind, or stopping, the senses, contemplation, walkabouts, fasting, exercise. But it's everything is all at the time, as they say sometimes, stop the noises of the mind. But there are many other ways to do it, and traditionally all over the world people have found their ways. Their communities have their particular ways.
And I think it's also about the posture of your heart, right? It's about your intention while you're doing those things. Because you could just say in the natural, okay, well, I'm going to fast. That's how I'm going to connect to my intuition. I'm going to fast and I'm going to do this. And there can be some underlying intentions, with that. Or maybe even a sense of, I need to be in control. So I think just really looking at, before we do things, really just looking at the heart of the matter, right? And surrendering into what's really my authentic intention.
Yeah, it's about trying to really discriminate what is the origin of your thoughts and your intentions.
Yeah.
Do they come from the soul consciousness? Or do they come from the suffering consciousness? That has actually several layers, and some layers are not as destructive as others, Sometimes suffering consciousness is trying. But it's about getting the awareness of from where your intentions come. Why do you do it?
Yeah.
And be ready to checking constantly the physical sensations of everything that you sense, every feeling, sentiment, or emotion.
And not being attached to them too.
Right. Not
to be able to move through it, because even some people can get addicted to suffering.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
As you know, with your own healing, that's, and in dealing with people and the way that, like from my experience with my healing with you, right? When I was laying down and Jorge was doing the work, afterwards we spoke and he said, for being a Hall of Fame weightlifter and doing all of that, I was really open in my upper body, but there was a lot of baggage, there was a lot of blocked energy moved out of my hips and my lower body. And so even though maybe, cognitively I moved out of that suffering consciousness, my body still embodied the suffering that I once experienced.
Yeah.
And until we met, it wasn't able to move, right? And so what I felt you did for me was to help move that energy, and then like on a physical plane and a spiritual plane, but journeying through the invisible in this, I believe on an energetic plane, you helped open up some doors for additional release in my body, right? Because when I left those interactions, those healing ceremonies, those healing sessions with you, then I had certain people exit my life. That was gone. That was some stress that was in my body that was gone. I went on a trip and I had the opportunity to get lots of different massages. That stress additionally was gone. I had the time and space to use some more of the healing practices that we have at Hope. That's gone. and then opening up the doors for new relationships, right? That can help bring in new codes into my body. So I felt like and that's what I want to go into next, like what's special about your healing. That's what was special about your healing to me, that you helped to move the energy on a physical, spiritual, on a whole nother plane to allow or exit other things into my life. So with that, what do you feel is special or unique about your healing?
I can say first that, in a traditional community, the people that I learned from were people from the fields, and there is a lot of different providers of services or people with different skills. So a medicine person is somebody who has the skills to enter into the invisible and move strings and clean things and nourish certain things and bring harmony and push away bad things. But it's similar if somebody has like a toothache, you can solve it yourself, yeah, probably, but there's no problem about going to the specialist and ask help for that, because the specialist will do it directly to the point. I mean, if the specialist is an honest, proficient person. So there is not so much like great mystical aura, around this profession in a traditional community, as sometimes in certain parts of the world people are expecting probably way too much. It's precise to the point that the people that I learned from, my teachers, were like simple, grounded, humble people, able to do extraordinary things, but never really thinking that they were different than any other service providers, like a fisherman, like a carpenter, like anything, a storyteller or whatever. So in that sense, you just try to help people with their problems. One thing is the verbal expression of their problems when they say, they come because they have something in mind. Then the other thing is the reading that you do, and then sometimes some of the things that they need cannot be assessed directly, and you need to go first for other things in the short time that we need, for a healing session. But you know that these other things are going to produce the domino effect, and then will bring the other things for the person.
That's it.
And then on another hand, you are who you are. So myself, I come from the world of first martial arts, Tai Chi, Qigong, Neigong, energy work, and I was doing all these healings from probably the Chinese frame, about vital energy and Qi and, on certain points of the body. And I was good at it. But then later when I learned the tools about accessing the soul of people on a completely different dimension, and for us emotions and the suffering consciousness is a way of matter. It's a more subtle matter, but at the end it's matter too. So you can cut it, slice it, burn it, move it, break it. So I treat that like matter. So I found my way of mounting the tools of accessing the soul on a strong flow of vital energy. Because again, you are who you are and you express the path that you have done yourself, and that's the only real thing you can do. So what I provide is kind of these sessions in which I use both tools and I dive inside of the person and I move and I nourish and I clear out and detach things. The feedback that I have is very good. It's all out there, it's very good. That's what I do it. And then there are certain things that I only do in Peru. I never do the work with the sacred plants outside of my country. The recipes that I use are complex. They use many plants, and I know what I can deliver on the right conditions, in the right place, with the help of the landscape.
Yeah.
But when I travel abroad, my healing family, the spirits of the plants, they come with me, and then when I work on people, we get a lot of the things that sometimes people get when they ingest some of the sacred plants too, and they can go into heavy purchase during or after the session, visions and things like that. And get the taste of the plants in your mouth. I get it myself all the time, you know. And all the other members of my healing family, you know, the ancient teachers of my lineages, the animals, the mountains, the waterfalls, you know, the lakes, everything that I have connected with, and they are happy to come and heal, you know, when I open up the doors of the invisible. So it's not something new what I'm doing, it's just one chapter of the whole traditional frame of healing, because the sacred plants were basically prescribed to people when they're needed. There are so many other things that you do, that you can do, and several other things that you should do before assessing the plants, if you want to stay really connected to the old healing ways or protocols, at least the ones I learned myself.
Yeah. So with diet and lifestyle and mindset.
Yeah, those things come too. But you know, traditionally, especially in the jungle, people travel long ways. I have been into that myself. You get to a place and you cannot stay too long. So the amazing opportunity, you know, all the different factors that have come to have two people to meet for a certain amount of time for doing a healing process, you know, in depth, which is actually a party of life, you know, it's opening the doors of the force of life. It's such an important event, a unique event, that in that short time, you have to assure that something really changes in order to honor the forces that come. So when I travel, I kind of follow those itinerant traveler, medicine man, you know, protocols.
And I love that just connecting with the plants and the healing is really a party of life.
It is.
It's a party of life, it's a celebration of life, and it's clearing, right? It's getting you to another state of living. And that's what people I feel are really searching for, is just reconnecting with that vitality and that deliciousness of life that makes you want to get up and get moving, and that you can have the best and most authentic relationships and connections and just bring that chi, that life force into everything you do. So I'm so grateful that you've come here and that you've written this book to get more exposure to just to the world, to people, to help them assist in their journey and celebrating the party of life and finding their calling and who they are and just clearing out all the noise. So Jorge is going to be in the States for how long?
A couple of months probably. I need to go back to Peru in October, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be, you know, back and forth periodically. We're going to do some things with him at HHO. So we'll keep you posted on our website, on our Instagram, Haute Healing Oasis. We have a sister page called the Haute Sage page. You'll see a link in there. So all his events and future events will be there for you to explore. And thank you so much, Jorge. Yeah, we're excited to have you. And remember to find his book on Amazon, Journeying Through the Invisible, The Craft of Healing with and Beyond Sacred Plants as Told by a Peruvian Medicine Man, Jorge Hachumak. Thank you so much. We will see you soon. Enjoy the party of life.